Trying to work on my new setup here. Didn't quite work out quite well on the intro, but should be good here going forward. Let me make sure all my stuff here is ready to go. I'm kind of running by the seat of my pants last few seconds, just trying to get this doggone thing set up because we're running late. I'm trying to watch the Georgia Senate runoff and all that, and yeah, busy night. But what's going on, peeps? So we are back. There's a lot uh, that is happening, obviously, right now with Georgia, but all of that stuff is live. And I mean, what kind of coverage am I going to give you that CNN and everybody else is not going to give you in terms of the runoff and who's doing what, when, why, where, all that sort of jazz? So what I figured is what we'll do is supposedly at about 7:30 we should kind of have a little better idea of what's going on, and that's mainly because at this point uh, you don't have a lot of people or a lot of precincts reporting. So right now, and mind you, I have it on the TV running here, so I'm just checking here. If you see me looking over, that's what I'm doing is looking at the TV. Uh, they say it's too early to call. They're looking at 28% reporting. So there's not really anything at this point to talk about with only 28% reporting. So is what it is. Not really concerned about that particularly. So what we'll do is we'll just kind of talk about different things that's going on in the news right now. As the show unfolds, they say at about, like I said, 7:30. So 20 or so minutes, we should have a little more of an idea of what's going on. So we'll find out here soon who won and or who's winning, because we have to get to that point of more precincts reporting and then calculating and doing all this other jazz. So right now, the news stations, they're just filling airtime. I mean, it's all the different stuff that I love to watch. I forget his name. His name is John something. The CNN guy, though, he's a freaking beast at this stuff. Like the amount of counties that he knows, uh, you know, either he just has a vault of a memory, or they prepare him really, really well every day. But a lot of that stuff flows so smoothly that I'm pretty sure he kind of has a vault for a memory. Uh, but you know, it's a bunch of repeat, repetitive. Here's what happened historically. Here's what's happening now, and they just kind of do that over and over and over until they have something particularly, you know, newsworthy or breaking news sort of thing. So what we're going to do is kind of go down a few rabbit holes, just looking at some things, and then come back to that part. Before we do that, before we do that, I wanted to give a shout out that's really unrelated to this show, but it was very influential and crucial to exactly what got me to this point, in my career that led me to the ability to do this sort of thing. So it's 2021 or 2021 now. Happy New Year. uh, and for 10 years or so, or maybe it's 8. Anyway, Flash, Adobe Flash has been on the way out. So I'm wearing my old Adobe Flash shirt, and you can see how worn it is. This isn't by design. This is just because I used to wear it all the time, and it's old. So there was, and I didn't pull it out, and I'm not gonna, you know, have my chair squeak all the way over to get that book, but uh, rewind to, I think it was 2011, 2012. I was writing a book with some co-authors, and it's called Flex in Action, which this logo here is Adobe Flex. And it was set to come out roughly 2 weeks in April or May, something like that. And Steve Jobs came out with, in the tech industry, an infamous post called Thoughts on Flash. Well, the long of it is that started the downfall of what was a technology that really and truly pushed the web forward in a way that browsers weren't allowing. You know, things like animations and stuff, you see them now. You can do them without Flash now, but it wasn't possible. Like, that's not even gonna say it wasn't easy. That stuff wasn't possible on the web without Flash. So Flash was there as a way for people to get these really cool menus. You know, you hover over it and it slides down, does all these crazy things. And so it was great. It was cool. Then it grew into building applications. And then it became even more and more ubiquitous across the web and desktop. And then it was trying to make the break into mobile. Steve Jobs wrote this because people wanted it on iPhones. They wanted Flash because sites weren't working on Flash. After he wrote it, so me and my co-authors, we still joke. We were laughing last year about the residuals. You don't get a lot of residuals on tech books because after a year, they're generally outdated unless you have like a long-running sort of book. But anyway, it was a fun experience. But Steve Jobs completely killed our book. It just became irrelevant at that time because people were not trying to do Flash anymore. So why is it relevant now? 2020. It's been a long journey for Adobe since then. It wasn't too long. Or you know what? Actually, I think it was maybe '09, '10 or something when this happened. But either way, it wasn't too long before Flash started becoming a little more relevant. Well, December 31st, 2020 was the date that Adobe was going to be ending Flash. Basically, no more support for it, that sort of thing. It's still out there. Things are still working on it, but it's the end of the road. So, is what it is, man. You know, it was a lot of fun. I did a lot of great projects, worked with a lot of great people. I thoroughly enjoyed the time that I spent working on Flash, learning it, just trying to perfect my skills, and you know, just made a lot of money on it too. So I was definitely happy about that. Uh, but it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool of a ride. So thank you, Adobe. Thank you, Macromedia, before then, for what you guys brought to the table, a technology that really changed at least my life. And I know it changed many others as well. All right. So first things first. In prepping for this show, I was looking at all the news that's happening today with everything that's going on with Pennsylvania. They refused to let the Democratic, the elected Democrat in the Senate be sworn in the Pennsylvania Senate because they said that, you know, the vote was invalid. They went to court. The court said it was valid. It's been certified. And they get there and they decide, nah, we're not gonna let him sit. He needs to leave so that we can give the oath to everyone else. I mean, these games, like I said this in 2017, 18, when the Democrats were trying to make some political moves for the right now. Like they basically were like very myopic. Like they're like, we need to do this thing right now so we can get this particular thing done. They did it, and then it came back to bite them majorly, where they could not block 3 different Supreme Court seats. When you play the game for right now, the long game is going to kick your tail every single time. And that's what happened. Well, this was happening in Pennsylvania. And I thought about going down this rabbit hole with all of that. And I was like, why? I mean, it is what it is, right? Like, what's it got? What the saying? What's it have to do with the price of tea in China? So we're gonna hit some stories here, and but it's not gonna be related to that. I mean, you can follow along what's going on there, what's gonna happen with that vote, going forward and all of that. But it's just a bunch of political theater. There's going to be a lot of that happening on Sunday. I mean, excuse me, tomorrow morning as well, when Congress goes to basically certify the vote. It's just fascinating to see the partisanship. I was having a conversation with some conservatives about it, and this one guy was calling congressmen, or I guess just the Democrats, morons, saying they didn't know what the Constitution said about this. And he's, talking about the 12th Amendment. And I'm like, well, I don't think you read the 12th Amendment. Because he kept saying Congress elects the president, the Senate president, and the House of Representatives, the vice president. I'm like, I don't think you understand what that is. And so we're going through this whole thing back and forth, and I'm trying to help them understand what that means. And, like there's a bunch of political theater that Republicans are saying they're not going to certify the vote. It's just theater at this point. Like there's nothing that they can really do about it. They can object, which will cause them to go back into chambers. They have 2 hours to discuss it. Then they come back out. I mean, they can do all this stuff if they want. But ultimately, it's going to turn out to be these certified votes that were provided by the state or states are going to be counted. They're going to basically, 1, 2, they're just going to count. That's it. They're just going to play count. That's it. And then once they go through all that, Pence is going to come up. He's going to count, and it's going to move on. Right? It's fascinating to see people so adamant about being wrong. Now, what games they may play to try to reverse the election, I don't put anything past the Republicans at this point. I wouldn't put it past the Democrats either. But it's the Republicans who are playing the games right now with this particular situation. So, we'll see what they end up doing. What they ultimately decide is the, primary factor for their decisions, whatever they want to do. Like, it's at this point, just let them throw their fit. That's just how I feel. Let them throw a fit. They want to throw a fit, throw a fit. Just like 16. You want to throw a fit? Throw a fit. It's not going to change anything, right? Like the screaming, the yelling, it's not going to change anything, right? Now, it won't change this outcome. You may, entice an entire future political wing to, take up arms or whatever the case may be. You may, but in this current situation, it's not going to change it. So what we're going to talk about is just a few different stories here. Let's check on the race real quick. 39% reporting. Warnock is up. Warnock is up 11.6. Ossoff is up 13.2. Or, 12.2. So that's basically both Democrats are up right now. Maybe we should just stop and just yell, "Stop the vote!" Maybe that's what we need. Stop the vote. Maybe not. Maybe they don't want that this time. Maybe they want the vote to continue. So I'll continue checking and keeping an eye on that. I probably should have just put that on my screens instead of having to look around my monitor every few minutes. So first story I wanted to talk about here, and I should have checked, but hopefully this shares the right browser. No, this is sharing my whole screen. Let's see if I can get this to share just the one particular screen. So it's not wanting to play fair. There we go. And let me pop the YouTube chat off the screen. All right. So, and it's not showing full. Is what it is. I'll address this when we come back to the next one. Actually, here, this should help. All right. So, if you recall, if you're old enough to remember, 2020, Jacob Blake was shot and killed in Kenosha. Kenosha is where the riots and all that stuff happened, and then we had Kyle Rittenhouse that happened, where he ended up killing two people. We did a whole episode on that, sort of thing. The thing about that particular situation was Jacob Blake got lost in all of it. And we just found out that the police officer who shot Jacob Blake won't face any charges. So if you don't recall this story, here's the big picture. Kenosha was the center of protests, some violent, after Officer Rustin Sheskey shot and wounded Blake, a black man. It's relevant in these times. On on August 23rd, the U.S. saw mass protests over police brutality and racism throughout the summer, set off by George Floyd's killing in Minneapolis. So this is the flashback. This is the relevant part, and we'll come off of this portion. Cell phone footage from the August incident shows Sheskey, a white law enforcement officer, again relevant for the narrative here, shooting Blake 7 times in the back as Blake entered a vehicle with his children in the back. The shooting left Blake paralyzed. The unrest that followed led to more than 250 arrests, including 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, and armed counter-protests who on Tuesday pleaded not guilty to charges related to the fatal shootings of 2 people. Ben Crump, who is the lawyer, ended up saying basically we have a lot of work to do and they must broaden the fight for justice. So, of course, they're, preparing themselves for potentially more violence, right, is what it boils down to. They're preparing themselves because they know last time what happened was all of this stuff with the police went on, and basically, boom, we kick off. Shoot, I want to say it was a month or 2 long, violent streak. Like it was bad, right? Now, if you watch the video, just brief history on what exactly happened there. The video starts at the point where he's done. Jacob Blake he's done with what's going on, and he's leaving. And the cops are telling him to stop. And he's saying, no, I'm not stopping. He's not under arrest. He's not a person of interest. He was actually breaking up a fight. He broke up a fight between 2 people. Cops were called. The cops started to question and threaten him. He walks to his car, opens up the door, boom, 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 boom. Now, with all objectivity, the cops don't know what exactly he's doing when he opens up the door. There were 7 people there, and you're telling me that 7 cops, you're telling me out of those 7 cops, a man who walks calmly around the front of his vehicle, opens up the door, not in a way of like reaching down to get something, but opens up the door, deserve to get shot in the back. And they're going to press zero charges. You can support the cops all you want. Heck, I got to support the cops. I have cops in my family. You know, I'm not anti-cop in any sort of way, but right is right and wrong is wrong. And they're way too quick to pull the trigger because of situations like this. They're basically confident and comfortable with the fact that they can get away with these sort of things. There's no way around it. Some of them are outright power trips. We've seen it time and time again. They're outright power trips. Sometimes they're justified. When they're justified, you won't see me come on here and say a thing about it. Because a justified shoot happens. And it doesn't matter if you're white, black, or otherwise. If you justify, or if you're in a situation and you give justification for a cop to shoot you because you have literally threatened them, coming at them with a knife or whatever, is what it is, right? It's going to happen. Or if you shoot at a cop, right? But we see too many times videos of particular people who are, you know, doing all these things, fighting cops, punching them, hitting them, chasing them with weapons. And the cops in one video of a naked guy coming out the woods, chasing a cop with the knife who was a 3 murder suspect. And the cops are running in circles trying to get away from him. No shots fired. Running in circles. So it's the unequal application that's the problem here. If they were just openly shooting citizens left and right, no matter what, you'd be like, okay, we need to change this system. Everybody would, right? Everybody would. But the minute you throw the word black, now all of a sudden it changes the narrative, right? Let's take a look at this a little closer, or let's ignore it, right? So that's why I called out those particular points in the article of black man, white cop, right? But for me, it doesn't matter what color the cop is. These are agents of the state, and they're killing citizens. Just say you're okay with the cops killing citizens without due process. Just own that. Don't make it a racial thing or anything. If you want cops to be able to kill citizens without their day in court, even when their life isn't threatened, just because they feel a certain way, like Philando Castile in Minnesota, just say that. And I'll know that you're somebody I'm not interested in hanging out with. That's all it boils down to. All right, so we're up to 44% on the estimated vote. Numbers are still the same. Race tightening up 9% between both of them. Dem still leading. All right, so the next one that interested me was the National Security Council names Russia as a likely origin of U.S. agency breach. If you recall, we talked about this not long ago, and basically what it is the so the narratives, again, the narratives that are happening are Russia, which for obvious reasons, the ties to Trump there, with Russia through his entire presidency sort of thing. And then Trump coming out and saying it could be China, that sort of stuff. So those narratives exist. They're there. But the funny thing for me is the software that actually got hacked. But what happened was basically there was a massive cyber attack. This is the U.S. task force that's responsible for investigating the massive cyber attacks. They say that they basically breached the Departments of Defense, State and Homeland Security, among others. I'm sorry, let me reread. I botched that opening sentence. A U.S. task force responsible for investigating the massive cyber attack that breached the Departments of Defense, State, and Homeland Security, among others, identified the hack as likely Russian in origin. This was per a joint statement on Tuesday. Here's why it matters. This is the first time the federal government has formally named Russia as the likely origin of attack. The attackers targeted SolarWinds, the globally used network management software that serves major companies and governments. So the FBI Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, CISA, the office, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and other agencies gathered under the National Security Council have so far identified fewer than 10 U.S. government agencies that were affected by the breach. Roughly 18,000 people and private sector companies are known to have been impacted over the agencies noted. It goes on to talk about, Trump's response in mid-December, but that's really irrelevant to me in terms of how he feels about the response. It's not uncommon for him to just blame fake news media and throw out a different name. Is what it is at this point. Uh, so the, the indications were that it's an advanced persistent threat actor, and basically they say that it's been ongoing for about a month or two. And my point of really bringing this up, in particular, because I read what the statement that actually came out, and it was interesting to see that just from a tech support perspective. Let me put it in these terms. I help a lot of people with hardware, software issues, things like that. It just comes with the territory. People that I know in finance, I hit them up because I'm like, hey, help me with my finances. Or people who are just good with money, right? So I'm good with tech. I get hit up a lot. And one of the things that I constantly tell people is be careful of what you install. What you install may seem useful. It may seem legit. It may seem like this is okay to install. But every single thing that you install opens you up for an attack. Everything. Everything. From your operating system of Windows or Mac OS or Linux, that's an immediate vulnerability, right? It just is. Like there's no way around it because those operating systems are based on software. So software that builds software that runs software is basically what an operating system is. So the SolarWinds in particular, that one was interesting to me because of how broad it was in terms of the basically it's network management. And mind you, it's remote monitoring tools as well, right? So if you imagine as an IT professional, you have anything over a few computers that are right around you, you're going to want to start managing those from a central location. Well, that's what it's supposed to be there for. They provide, and here, actually, I'll just show their site. They provide network management, system management, IT security, database management, IT service management, application management, and these managed service providers. But this is the one that got me. When I saw this, because I didn't know much about the software prior to this hack, but when I saw the hack and I saw the breadth of the things that they support here, this could be pretty massive because this touches everything. Network management, that means you can potentially see and discover other devices, which just lets them potentially through the entire network of devices that are connected, which could be massively broad. Don't know. It could mean nothing. It just depends on what products they were using. The IT security. What do you do when your security software is the vulnerability? Like this can't be good for the company. The company has to take a massive hit. Database management. So if it has access to the database, whatever database that may be, what happens if now SolarWinds is hacked and it has the keys to the database? Now your system is completely vulnerable. No telling what kind of data was taken from this. So for me, just from a tech perspective, I mean, yeah, I'm a nerd. It's fascinating. Like I was gonna hedge my verbiage here, but no, it's fascinating because this is the kind of stuff that in our industry that will lead a lot of decisions, right? Think about anybody that has that software deployed. Their IT department probably had to go apply some patch or try to completely get rid of the software to move on because the higher ups don't want to be the next name on the list. They may already be on the list and they have to mitigate this. And now all of a sudden they could lose a ton of business for getting hacked. I mean, you know, you've heard about the Equifax and all these other hacks that have happened basically where people are losing. I mean, these companies are losing all of your data. Like it's massive. It's definitely massive. It has broad reaching implications. And especially since it was so many companies as well that were a problem. So something to keep an eye on just to see, because we don't know particularly what was exposed and have they even expelled them from the systems or any, like, you don't know. This is like a needle in a haystack. They have to go in and try to see what did they do, what did they change, what did they leave, is there something still there sniffing network traffic? Don't know. But they have the traces to show that stuff is flowing to Russia. We'll find out how true that is once they release some of those particulars. So, with the Electoral College certification happening tomorrow within Congress, as I mentioned, there's a lot of different angles that are happening. What you have is you have a lot of Republicans who are essentially pushing and saying, we don't need to certify this vote. We need to block it. We need to do whatever we can to keep Biden from being president. Now, I'm old enough to remember 2016 when the Democrats and anti-Trumpers started yelling, "Not my president." And all the memes came out and they're saying he's still your president and still your president and all this sort of stuff. And basically the right was mocking the left. Okay, is what it is. All's fair in meme war. So now the right is out here with "not my president." And it's, I know, I'm sorry. I can come and beat this drum every single week, but I don't see how you support parties at this point. I just don't see how. I don't get it, because they just make you into lemmings and they're forcing you into a particular ideology. For what purpose? For what end goal? Right? I mean, there's no way, absolutely no way you think the conservative party is fiscally conservative. Not in my lifetime. I'm 40. I got all these grades to show. 41. Sorry, just had my birthday. I have all these grades to show for it. And I've never in my life since 79 ever had a Republican president that was fiscally conservative. Just haven't. There hasn't been one. Maybe H.W. Bush. Don't know. Don't know a ton about his fiscal policy. He was only here for 4 years. And I was young, 10-ish, 10 to 14. So I didn't really know. Or no, I guess it wasn't 10. It was 8 to 12. So I didn't really know much about his. But Reagan being such a huge name I've looked into, he wasn't fiscally conservative. George W. Bush definitely wasn't fiscally conservative. Trump definitely wasn't fiscally conservative. So there's no way you're voting Republican for fiscal conservativeness. There's no way. No, absolutely no way. Now, on the Democrats, there's no way you think the Democrats are really here for the people. I used to think that the Republicans were the head, and the uh, Democrats were the heart. That was how I kind of summed up politics. Uh, but I've come to see that it's not really about that for them either. If they wanted to, they could have pushed for any number of these programs or things that they wanted to push for when they had a majority the first 2 years of Obama. Uh, they ended up getting Obamacare over the hill, but they still do all these things with like pushing fat into bills and all these sort of things to kind of push money into certain industries. Like they're both coming from a different structural perspective, right? Like they both say this is what we're about, but when it comes down to looking at the policies and the things they're actually doing, because even Obamacare, you know who wrote that? The insurance industry. I wish I was paying attention then, because if you look at the stock charts, go look Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, go look at them, and you see just like like it's hockey stick movement. Why is that? Because what happens when everybody has to have insurance? Everybody has to buy insurance or get fined. Who benefits? The insurance companies. Who helped write the legislation? So, yes, I completely support a bunch of things that happened with uh, the Affordable Care Act, like pre-existing conditions and not charging women more just because they're a woman, like all sorts of things. Like I support a bunch of stuff. There's some stuff I don't support, like the individual mandate. Didn't like that. So there are good and bad with it, right? But trust and believe, this big business thing that they try to be against, nah, player, nah, player. And then they're so for climate change, and they're fighting for climate change, right? And then in the fight for climate change, guess who they appoint to the climate czar, or Biden, who Biden's appointing? John Kerry, who owns all of these machines. I think he owns a plane, uh, and he's the domestic climate czar. Uh, so he owns all of these machines that emit a bunch of, you know, stuff that hurts the climate. So, I mean, come on, man. Right? Like, they're not here for the reasons they say they're here. Right? So, if you just step away from the party politics, you'll see. Now, why am I going down this rabbit hole again? Well, it's simple. Because tomorrow they're going to go over this electoral college win. And the problem here, this article is on Axios as well. The last two were, I don't think I called that out, but the last two were from Axios. It's Scoop. Senator Tim Scott will vote to certify Biden's electoral college win. Mike M in the chat says, MAGA. And I say, it didn't happen. MAGA didn't happen, Mike. We didn't make America great. It's over. Ship is sailed. So Tim Scott is saying that he's going to vote for certifying the election. So here's why it matters. Scott, who joined several veteran Republican senators standing firm against President Trump's efforts to overturn his legitimate election defeat, sparked buzz about a 2024 presidential run after getting red carpet treatment at the RNC in August. This is why I chose this article. There's quite a few more that we could bring in about this, but this was an important point. So the big picture is Scott's argument echoes that of other pro-Trump dissenters like Senators Tom Cotton and Mike Lee, who are worried about the precedent that will be set by their GOP colleagues' effort and potential damage to American democracy. As the only black Republican in the U.S. Senate, Scott has played an important role as the party seeks to expand its appeal to a more diverse group of voters. Right. Okay. I'm not going to rabbit hole that. Let me finish this real quick. This is what he'll say. As I read the Constitution, there is no constitutionally viable means for Congress to overturn an election wherein the states have certified and sent their electors. This is what he said in a draft copy of his statement. Some of my colleagues believe that they have found a path, and while our opinions differ, I do not doubt their good intentions to take steps towards stamping out voter fraud. Importantly, I disagree with their method both in principle and in practice. For their theory to work, Nancy Pelosi and House Democrats would have to elect Donald Trump president rather than Joe Biden. That is not going to happen. Not today or any other day. True. We'll see what happens when he actually gets there and, goes down the rabbit hole of having to speak and deal with potentially jeering or whatever else may be happening. We'll see. But the important part that I caught was Tim Scott was actually on the rise because of this whole Blexit thing, right? The black exit from the Democratic Party. And we're up to 50%. The race is about 5% off. And Warnock and Ossoff are still winning right now. Looks like we're not going to get a results by the end of the show, but we'll see. Race is tightening as more votes are coming in. All right, so Tim Scott was basically the black representation for the Republicans so that they can relate to the black community, right? Because people think that representation is what's needed in terms of having your voice heard, right? Now, in terms of diversity, I'm all for representation. I think if you're building software and you're trying to address like the black community in particular, or a particular, let's not say the black community. Let's say if your software is intended to help the working class and the poor, right? The majority of the working class and poor basically at the bottom of both of those scales is the black community. It's black, Hispanic, and then it goes to white, and you have Asian mixed in there as well, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? But the lower rung financially in America is black and then Hispanic. And not digging into the why or any of those sort of things. But that's just a fact. So people tend to think that representation matters for policy decisions, right? If you have somebody that is writing software for those lower tiers, I say representation matters because you kind of want to know how they operate, right? How do they use software? What is their daily life like? What do they tend to do? Like, if you don't get it, you don't get it, right? Like, if you're not there, you're not in that mix, you don't understand that lifestyle, you just don't get it, right? But it doesn't matter what the situation. I use software because I'm a programmer. It is what it is. But when it comes to politics, even the great Martin Luther King said, we don't need basically diversity just pushed in by skin color. That shouldn't be the measuring stick for representation because it doesn't matter. You're going to have somebody who's black who's going to screw over the black community, white who's going to screw over the white community, and vice versa. It's going to happen. So the skin color isn't it. Basically, he went to, mind you, this was the 60s, roughly 64? I forget. But you can check out the book, Where Do We Go From Here, in King's Words, on Audible, if you want to hear him say the words. And essentially what he was saying was it should be made up of the make of the man, right? And that's why I say is the 60s, right? Because he particularly were talking about men. And so that's the important part. But identity politics is played by them all, even though you hear the right always say it's the left that does it. Who does it? But the right does it all the time. And so the point about Tim Scott is that he was basically rising up the ranks, right? And if you get a black man, the black community would be like, I'm voting for the black guy just because he's black. We're going to get some of that Obama treatment, right? They bashed all the Obama stuff about Obama got elected because black people voted just because he was black, which happened in a lot of cases. Just like voting for the man in 2016 because they couldn't see a woman being president happened. All these things happen. All of it happens. Tim Scott gets to the point where he's running for president, he will get votes just for being black. The very thing that the Republicans were excoriating. But what happens now that he has, quote unquote, taken the stance against Trump? Because that's what they're kind of playing this as. Is like you're taking a stance against Trump, right? Who cares? The dude, from a power perspective, is about to go back to being irrelevant. He'll still get his reports, which he doesn't read now. So why was he going to read them in retirement? He's just going to golf all the time. So nothing's going to change. He's still just going to do the same stuff. He just won't have any power other than just going out and trying to rally troops and stuff like that. But even then, in plenty of these races that he's backed and he's supported, they have failed. I mean, it is what it is. Like yes, he can throw a major rally and he can get thousands upon thousands of people to show up. How does that look even after the election? And what's the relevance after the election? Or excuse me, after the inauguration? What's the relevance? So anyway, it's just interesting to see that kind of happen. All right. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Basically, there's a number. I don't even remember the total. I know there was 12 at one point, 12 senators. I don't even know what the number is right now, who are going to basically put on this show tomorrow. But the Constitution is clear. The states sent their electors. They sent the votes. They certified the vote. I mean, it is what it is. Move on. Just move on. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about here before we kind of catch up with what's going on in election night in America. So we talk about ways to improve and manage our situation in this system, basically. And I found this article, and I found actually a couple articles, but this one I liked because the title brought out the word, the title brought out the word humdinger. And I was like, well, of course, that's the article I'm going to show. This here is from Market Watch. You can check it out. The famed investor doubling down says, stock market a real humdinger of a bubble. So this is the quote, and I'm just going to read this quote. I do suggest reading through it. They kind of talk about some of these, some of the reasoning and where things are and stuff like that. But here's the quote. He said, I am doubling down because as prices move further away from trend at accelerating speed and with growing speculative fervor, of course, my confidence as a market historian increases that this is indeed the late stage of a bubble that is beginning to look like a real humdinger. Now, the important thing to understand about that particular verbiage is the bubble is going to be popped, right? Like that's why they call it a bubble. The bubble will burst. And when the market bubble burst, that's what happens. So you hear a lot about, I guess it was like 99, something like that. You know, I wasn't investing or paying attention at the time, but you had the dot-com bubble. When that happened, tech stocks just fell through the floor. Plenty of others fell through the floor as well, but the tech stocks definitely fell through the floor. You had the real estate bubble that led to the '08, '09 crash as well. What happened then? Horrible amounts of foreclosures. And then what do? We bail out Wall Street and give the banks untold numbers. Well, they were told, but ungodly numbers when it comes to the amount of money we were giving them with very little strings attached to it. Millions and millions paid out in bonuses, as opposed to going to help the people that they actually scammed and schemed. When these bubbles pop, they're usually pretty bad. And so my point for this article was to just, again, leading up to COVID for 2 years roughly, we came on here. Me and the guys came on here, and we talked about being prepared for this crash. We talked. There's a recession coming. We talked about all the economic indicators. Every single economic indicator said we were going to a recession. COVID was the thing that prompted us to go to a recession. But it was happening regardless. All COVID needed to do was just tip over one domino. Less than a week, the market crashed. Less than a week. We wanted to we need to shut down for 2 weeks and to try to, control COVID. We couldn't even shut down the economy, and not even the economy. We couldn't even stop going places and just spending money for 2 weeks without crashing the economy. The yield curve was inverted. Like, all the signs were there. They were all there. And with them all being there, we kept saying, man, there's a recession coming. It's happening. Be ready. I wasn't as prepared as I wanted to be because I gamble a little bit, and I rode the wave right up to things started getting bad, and I was like, let me wait. And then I ended up losing 5 figures worth of my 401k because I waited. I waited a little too long to move all of the stock, move it out of stock and into bonds. There's also talk, speaking of bonds, there's talk of a bond bubble, that the bond market may crash, right? So again, the point, be prepared. Be prepared for when this happens. No matter what that means for you, whether that means buying up silver, gold, which I highly suggest doing, buying up crypto, highly suggest getting some Bitcoin. Not necessarily all the altcoins, but definitely I suggest getting some Bitcoin or stacking some cash so that that you're liquid a little bit in your account. Be prepared, because when the bubble pops, it's going to be bad. No matter who was president, it was going to pop. We've been saying that for the longest here. No matter who was president in 2021, this thing is going to pop. They have no control over it. Now, Biden appointed Janet Yellen. Janet Yellen's about to get the photocopier out, and she about to print this money. Like just not even gonna worry about print. She's gonna Photoshop. I mean, photocopy a bunch of dollar bills and get them shipped out. Right? Like she's not going to hold back. She believes in putting money in the market. That's what she believes. So they're going to do everything they can do. They'll probably do another round of quantitative easing. They're probably going to do all this stuff. Just don't rely on them. Don't rely on their moves to solidify your position. What if you need to get a second job right now just to work a little harder for 6 months so that you can stash away 6 months worth of extra money to be prepared for a downturn? Do it. If you have extra money that you have now, but you're spending it willy-nilly, just kind of out enjoying life, start putting some of that stuff away. I highly suggest getting 6 months worth of your bills just stored up. And then if you can get 12 months, get 12 months stored up, right? The longer time horizon you have, the less affected you'll be when the government blows this thing up again with whatever they decide to do next, right? It's Biden's been talking about another shutdown. If we come around with another shutdown, you may see the markets respond in the same way. We just never know. But you just be prepared. You individually, it's your responsibility to be prepared. Now, if they come out and shoot you another check, take that money. Take that bread. Like, nobody's going to turn it down. These big businesses, they're not turning it down. They're going after all this PPP. They're going to get all that PPP. Other people's money. Is it an OPP? That's what it is. Other people's property. I went down a rabbit hole. So they're going to go out and get this money, right? Because that's what they're going to do. So I don't blame anybody for taking that extra money, right? The individual money, the stimulus checks. I don't blame anybody. If they're going to send you money, take the money. They want you to take the money and blow it. If you need to spend it on bills to carry yourself for a few months, do it. Do it. But if you don't have 6 months, try to store it. Try to store it up. If you don't need it for bills, just stack it. Just stack it. If you can get your hands on a interest-bearing checking account, it's not much. The rates suck right now, so it's not going to grow much wealth. But you could put it in there and just kind of let it sit. You'll get pennies, quarter here or something. It's not going to be a lot. Depending on how much you put in there, you could end up getting 10, 20, 30, 40, 100, $200 if you get enough money in there. But just be prepared. That's what it boils down to. And I always tell people, have $1,000 emergency fund, 6 months worth of your bills, just your bills, not things that you could potentially defer. And then, of course, if you can get out of debt, do your best to get out of debt, because this whole system is built on debt and consumerism. They need you in debt, and they need you just spending money on stuff. That's why the economy crashed, because you weren't spending money. 90%, I think it was 91% consumerism. That's what our economy was made of. So who has the power in the economy? That's right. We do. So just be prepared for what's coming. All right. So let's pull the mic over here so I can take a look back and see what's going on. I'm checking CNN because I like their technology better than everybody else. Their boards are generally more interactive. So I like the tech. Fox is coming up. They're getting a little better. So they might steal me away, but I like their tech at CNN. So Warnock, 50.5% against Loeffler at 49.5%. Ossoff, 50.1% versus Perdue, 49.9%. This 61% of the vote is in, and there's still plenty of votes left out there. So that's why it's too early too early to call. The interesting part is going to see how the Republicans respond here, right? If the Republicans lose, they're going to say, it's rigged. If the Republicans win, they're going to say, see, I told you, Trump won because all this stuff didn't happen now, and we see that the Republicans win Georgia. Like they're gonna mind twist this thing. And I can't lie, it's gonna be glorious to watch. It's gonna be hilarious to watch. I'm not gonna hold you guys up. The election is there. The polls are closed right now. So dig in or don't. It's up to you. You don't have to follow this stuff every single minute, but take a look at the articles. Follow us on social media. I'm sharing out all of the articles there so that you can get to them from there. And also check us out. Check out all the past episodes, politicalfreeagents.com, or if you don't want to type all that, pfapodcast.com. Go check that out. Follow us. Hit the like, hit the subscribe on YouTube. We thank you guys for tuning in every week. I've enjoyed hearing your feedback that comes back about the episodes, or when we miss an episode, how we messed up your day because you got your plan. So we try our best to get here every Sunday and Tuesday. And I'm talking to Chris and Mike about when they'll be able to return. Life just got busy, so it is what it is. But check us out. Keep an eye on everything that's going on this week, particularly the vote in Georgia tonight, the certification of the votes tomorrow for Trump to become president, or excuse me, for Biden to become president. Pay attention to those things, and just keep an eye out on the weeks leading up to the inauguration. So even though I say outright, yep, Trump lost, it is what it is, time for him to walk off into the sunset, you never know what kind of political gamesmanship they'll do. It be like that in these streets. We're the Political Free Agents, and we're out.